Hello everybody, and thank you for clicking on this new video from Checkmate Humanity. On this channel, I do commentary about social media with an aim toward making the environment better for everyone until the social media platforms kick into gear and do their part to make things better. It'll take a while for those platforms to catch up, so while we wait, we all have a part to play in making this a productive, safe, and enjoyable environment for everyone. Now, when I first started YouTubing about a year ago, maybe a little over a year ago, on my other channel, Trauma and True Crime, I was naive to how hard people on YouTube would go after other people, and I was very naive to the ways that that would happen. I had heard the term "go real life" thrown around a lot, as in don't go real life, but it was hard to have an idea of what people really meant by that because everyone seems to have their own definition. And when a newbie comes along and is told don't go real life, it's hard to follow that advice when the definition changes per channel. And when a definition is clear as mud, it's really hard to follow. So in this video, I want to offer what I believe is a clear definition of going real life. And I want to tell you why going real life has no place in a civil social media society. So here's how I define going real life. Going real life is sharing anything on a social media platform that an individual has not shared on that platform themselves. For instance, there are people on YouTube whose screen names have nothing to do with their real names. If that person shares their own real name on YouTube, it's fair game for others to talk about it, but it's not fair game for others to do background checks and share information from that person's background that they haven't shared themselves. In my opinion, this also includes sharing someone's social media profile from another platform. For instance, taking my social media profile from Facebook and sharing it on YouTube. Even though that Facebook profile may be public, if I haven't shared it on YouTube myself, it's really not anyone's business on YouTube. Now, why is this important? Well, for a number of reasons. First, sharing information about someone that they haven't shared themselves is just downright disrespectful to them and just in general. You don't have the right to decide what is shared and not shared about another individual, only yourself. You only have the right to share your own personal information, and others don't have the right to share your personal information by that same token. Second, sharing information about someone that they haven't shared themselves could put that person and or their family members in danger, especially if it's shared in the context of roasting them for one reason or another. When you share that information that they haven't shared and you paint them in a bad light, anyone could see that information and decide to make that person's life miserable in any number of ways based on the way you roasted them and the information you provided. Third, there are some privacy violations that are against terms of service, specifically when a person's address and phone number are shared without their permission. And I want to stop right here and say this. Just because the YouTube terms of service has the most minimal definition possible of a violation of privacy, it doesn't give people the moral or ethical right to share information that someone hasn't shared themselves. The terms of service is a legal document that protects YouTube from being sued when someone's private contact information is shared. The terms of service does not define the moral or ethical privacy violation standards, such as sharing someone's real name or profile from another social media platform. But in my view, respecting others' privacy in those ways is just as important as sticking to the most basic rules in the terms of service. Now, let's drill down on the consequences of going real life, and let's use my own mistakes and experience as an example. Because I have personal knowledge of the entire situation, because I'd like others to learn from my mistakes rather than making those mistakes themselves. When I first started YouTubing, I was really naive about all of this, and I shared the Facebook profile and name of another YouTuber's father. And in my mind, since this YouTuber had shared her full name and her father's Facebook profile was public, it seemed okay for me to share. But looking back, it was totally unnecessary for me to do that. I could have made every point I wanted to make without digging into their father's Facebook profile. So that was me going real life on someone, and it wasn't cool. And it was totally reasonable for that person to be angry at me for sharing their father's Facebook profile. But what that person did to me as a result was completely over the top. I mean, That woman dragged me for months. She shared every single piece of private information she could find on me. She shared my full name, which required a background check for her to find. She shared my ex-husband's name and talked about contacting him. She totally mischaracterized my custody arrangement, my childhood. She took a podcast interview I had done about my childhood trauma and mental illness and aired the full 2.5 hours of that podcast while making jokes and blaming me for my own child sex abuse and mental illness. She also threatened me by telling me that her dad is the godfather and I fucked with the wrong family. And every time she talked to or about me, she made me into some kind of sexual object, knowing that I have a mental illness as a result of being sexually abused as a child. Now, going through all of that was absolutely brutal. But when I shared her dad's public profile, I had no idea what kind of person I was dealing with. And that's another reason this going real life policy is so important. When you think about sharing information that another person hasn't shared themselves, you have no idea who you are dealing with. You have no idea if that person will have an explosive reaction and go much harder on you than you did on them, making your life miserable. There's no guarantee that the person whose information you shared is going to hold the same line as you. In my case, I thought I was sharing something that was fair game. In hindsight, it really wasn't, but her reaction was far more drastic than I ever imagined it would be. And for everything I just talked about in my situation, I've witnessed even more brutal attacks on people's real lives. In one community that I follow as a lurker, digging up and sharing people's information is like drinking water to them. And there seem to be no limits. I've seen people share the social media profiles of other people's children. I've seen people dig up and drag people who've tragically lost their children and somehow insinuate that it was their fault. I've seen people share private diary entries of a 14-year-old girl. I've seen people try to get the child of a YouTuber they didn't like thrown out of their college. I've seen people go to the social media accounts of other people's children and call them every disgusting name in the book just because they're the child of someone they don't like. This is just going too far, y'all. There needs to be a line. And I think the line I've defined is totally reasonable, even if it's, hard for a lot of people to follow. Above and beyond the absolute disrespect and invasion of privacy when information is shared that people haven't shared themselves, such as the names of their friends and family, those friends and family members are exposed to any deviant who may come across that information and decide to go after them. There's just no reason to contribute to that possibility. How would you feel if you were the one who shared that information and something terrible happened to them or their family as a direct result of that? Hopefully, you wouldn't feel good about that. Now, there's one caveat that I do need to address because I feel this exception coming at me in the comment section, and I want to address it up front. And that is when we're dealing with a true public figure. The definition of a public figure can be confusing, but think of it this way. A public figure is someone who's already known by the general public above and beyond their social media presence. To me, this doesn't apply to influencers who gained their reputations purely through social media. These are people whose profiles have gone way beyond the scope of that one social media platform. An example of this is Molly Golightly. I am totally neutral on Molly Golightly. I don't really watch her, but I'm just using her as an example. She's a YouTuber in the crama community, and she was a public figure before she came to YouTube because she was on a popular reality TV show called Wife Swap. On that show, Molly Golightly shared all kinds of information about her life that she chose to share herself. And when someone reaches that public figure status and then they come onto YouTube and say, yep, I'm that same public figure who did that TV show, and they've shared that information about themselves far and wide, that information is open for public discussion. However, even with these public figures, it's still not morally or ethically okay to weaponize that information for the sole purpose of dragging them through the mud or lying about them. And it's not okay to bring their families and their children into it. Now, let's say that you're caught up in a going real life cycle right now with other YouTubers, just as I speak. There are many, many people who are caught up in that cycle right now, and it's dragging entire communities down the drain. You may be wondering how to stop that cycle. You may think that since the other person went real life on you, you get to go real life on them, turnabout fair play. Well, let's take time to recognize that it's all wrong. Let's swallow our pride, be the bigger person, and the next time another person goes real life on you, report it to YouTube. Go legal if you want to, if there really was a true invasion of privacy and things happen as a result of that. But it's really hard to hold a moral high ground and go ham on those people when you react to them in kind, when you do the same thing as they're doing. Their terrible behavior will speak for itself, and there's plenty of content to be had in pointing out that terrible behavior without doing the same thing. When you do that same thing, you lose your ability to stand on that ground, and you've absolutely helped turn up the collective heat in the community. So I'm going to end this by offering an apology to that YouTuber whose father I put in one of my videos last March. That person knows who she is. I don't need to call her out by name. And that person also knows that she owes me an apology for all the stuff she did to retaliate against me, but I'm not holding my breath, and I'm not going to use that as an excuse to keep going real life on her. Thank you very much for watching. Please remember to hit the thumbs up, set your notifications to all, and subscribe to this channel for more content. Peace out.